of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Hello, make sure everything's working here, ladies and gentlemen. Bring in the big fella, there he is. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joining me for... Well, it's another week in paradise, even though there isn't much news coming out of Parramatta. It's my good mate, Sixties, also known as Craig. Big fella, the season is reaching its frenzied zenith with the big deciders in the NRL and NRLW to be played on Sunday out at, the Olympic Park. It's is it a core? Yeah, it's a core right now, isn't it? Allianz is the Sydney Football Stadium. It used to be what a core is now. So we've got a couple of games left in the pocket. Before we wrap up the regular and post seasons and then look towards international football and maybe, just maybe, the preseason. So still plenty of football to talk about, mate, but as always, how are you doing and how is chat doing?
Well, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, mate, it's bloody hot today.
It's warm. It's warm, yes.
It's insane. Now, in the old days with the tip sheet, when we were just on audio, we could be in any state.
The sweat and
in the undies recording.
Exactly. The Reg Grundies.
And no one would be any the wiser. There may have been a third person that was on the tip sheet, not going to give away any names, Clint G, who might have done that sort of thing. I don't know. I can't verify. But now that we're showing our faces, we have to adhere to our PG rating that we have on this and come in fully clothed. G'day to everyone in chat as well. And also, shout out, of course, to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, and, of course, the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And if you haven't got tickets to Dennis Carnahan's show at Vikings on the 11th, was it, John? The 11th of October?
I believe you're correct. Let me just double check our things. Yes, it is Saturday the 11th of October at Vikings.
Yeah, make sure you get along to that Rugby League the Musical. It's bound to be a lot of fun. Tickets might not be there, but just check now. And John, of course, also reminder to like and subscribe no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on. And I do want to give a couple of shout-outs, John, especially to Noah and Ella, who are on school holidays with Dad at the moment. I'm sure Dad's enjoying them being on the break. But Noah has he's busted his leg and he was primed for big representative touch footy season, that sort of thing. And he couldn't have timed it any worse. But, mate, you're going to come back bigger and better than ever. I know Dad and Ella are working with you on not just on skills, but on strength and all that sort of stuff. And don't forget that by the time Mitch Moses gets back from the Kangaroo Tour, he'd be looking for you to get out on the field and help him out in pre-season. So you got to come back for that. And I know you will. And big things await you, mate. So keep up the great effort. And we're all proud of you with how you're going. So, enjoy the rest of the holidays as best you can.
It's always a tough one when you have an ill-timed injury, isn't it? So.
Oh, mate, and nothing's worse than, being off your feet with an injury. Look, knowing how serious Noah takes his footy and his training and how committed he is, he'll come out of the other side of this, as I said, bigger and better than ever. John, I think it's time to hit the stinger as we go to the Eels news.
News team!
What little there is to talk about this week, that is.
John, actually, there's quite a bit to talk about, which it's sort of breaking all the time, because first of all, the big news with Parramatta is winning the club championship, which has been, I remember when Parramatta first started to come strong in the 70s and 80s, that being part of the holding on to the club championship was almost like a given with the Eels, because they were strong across the grades. But of course, it doesn't take into consideration the NRL now. It's a New South Wales Rugby League award. So just to give people a rundown, this is the 18th time that the Eels have won the club championship. It's also called the Flowers Memorial Pennant.
Yeah, Chris is in chat all over that one. Yep.
Yeah, just going to run through the amount of times that it was won. So this will give you an idea about that run through the 70s and 80s. It was won in 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 86. Then it was a gap through to, I think, the Brian Smith era when it was won in 97. And then it switched to the Flowers Memorial Pennant with the NRL. And we won it in 98, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2005, 2008. And then there's been a gap. But here it is, 2025, and the Eels have won it. And there's a little bit on the Eels website. There's an explanation of the points that are awarded from everything from New South Wales Cup down to Lisa Fiola and Harold Matt. So it's all those main New South Wales Rugby League pathways competitions that determine the winners of the club championship. So it's massive congratulations to the Eels on winning that. It's something I think to be proud of, because it's an indication of the strength of the club coming through with the pathways. Exciting times ahead. And speaking of exciting times ahead, John, I think we should also now mention that the Eels have named their junior rep coaches for this year.
Not a lot of turnover, which is to be expected given that we literally just said you've won the Flowers Memorial Pennant, so you've been dominating for all the grades. But there is a new face there in Elisa Fiola. So I'll let you take us
Sort
through.
of a new face.
Well, sorry.
Sort of a new face.
Rising to a little bit more notoriety from assistant coach to head coach.
Yeah, so James Reid has been appointed the Lisa Fiola Cup coach. Now, that comes with the change with Ryan Walker moving up from Lisa Fiola to Tasha Gale. He's taking over from Shah Henry. Shah, of course, had premiership success with the Tasha Gale girls last year, but she's taken up an opportunity up at Penrith. And Ryan Walker, who also won the competition with the Lisa Fiola Cup team, has moved up to the Tasha Gale. And as a consequence, his assistant coach, which is James Reid, will now step up and be the head coach of the Lisa Fiola Cup. And we should also mention that James has not just been the assistant coach this year, he was the assistant coach last year. And last year in the Parramatta Junior Rugby League, he was named the coach of the year for the Parramatta Junior Rugby League for his work with the Parramatta club. So he's a name that's well known within Parramatta ranks, and he gets the head coach gig for the junior rep team. I'm not sure what's happening with regard to whether he'll be full-time like a lot of the other coaches were this year. I think the only coach that wasn't full-time last year was Shah, and that may well have been a feature of or a result of because she had a job outside of rugby league, and she was also looked after the house for the Parramatta players, young Parramatta players that were living away from home. So she did have multiple roles within the club as well as employment outside the club. So I'm not quite sure about exactly why she wasn't full-time last year. So I haven't received word on whether James is going to be full-time going into next year. But as we spoke about with Bernie, that investment of having coaches in a full-time role at the club.
Chris is saying James won't be full-time.
Okay. So, but it is a big investment for those that are full-time there at the club, and it paid dividends straight away with the finals appearance of all grades. So, anyway, John, that's that news. Now, a bit of something that we weren't going to touch on because it's pretty much a rumor that's out there, and we're only going to mention it because it was brought up on 360 tonight. Was Braith and Astor brought up the rumor about Zach Lomax being on his way out of the Eels. Now, as far as we're aware, that's not happening because, well, first and foremost, Zach has a contract at the Eels. And I know people might say that doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I don't even know that he's asked or made inquiries about departing. So we're only going to mention it because it was mentioned on 360 tonight. But at this stage, we wouldn't give it too much credence, and we'll just sort of leave that there. John, the other little bit of Eels news is that Kellyville is home to a favourite son this week because Lukey Burt and his Burleigh Bears are in the grand final
in the
this
national
week.
championship between the Q Cup and the New South Wales Cup, and going in a favour maybe. I'm happy to have Luke Burt back in the Kellyville precinct there. Obviously, both have high opinions of Birdie as a player and a coach, so big week for him, isn't it? Taking on the New Zealand Warriors in that national championship.
Oh, mate, that's a huge ask. We know how strong the Warriors were this year, and we'll get into our tips for each of the grand final matches in the NRL news segment. But that is an incredibly strong New Zealand Warriors team. It's interesting because that means across the three grand finals, the only Sydney club represented is the Roosters in the NRLW, because you've got two interstate teams in the NRL, you've got an interstate and an overseas team in the Australian Championship game, and then you've got an interstate team against the Roosters in the NRLW. So it's interesting that we've got that. I don't know whether you'd start to say the power base is moving away from New South Wales, and especially given that Penrith have had the title for such a long period of time now and have done very well in lower grades as well over those years. But it is interesting that success is spread elsewhere. And, of course, it does come on the back of Melbourne winning the Jersey Flegg grand final last week, in the end quite comfortably, in their clash with Penrith.
Was?
Dylan Brettle.
Dylan Brettle, yeah, former Parramatta halves there.
Yes.
A player that we
I think Dylan's got a little bit. I think he's put on a little bit of beef, not much, but a little bit of beef.
That was the thing that we were concerned about with Dylan as a prospect. He was a very talented halfback, but was rail thin, wasn't he? And he's done a good job at Melbourne, so well done to him. And the Melbourne Storm securing the title. And again, I think the Parramatta Eels boys be looking at what could have been. They dusted up Melbourne twice in those final rounds there, and unfortunately tripped themselves up against Penrith.
Yes. So, well, look, that's footy, isn't it?
That is footy.
And we did say the only thing that will beat Parramatta will be Parramatta themselves.
Prescient prediction right there for sure.
Yeah, so that's how it turned out. But John, as I said, Luke Burt's going to be doing his prep up there at Kellyville, and also it should be a familiar face there, Lorenzo Talatina, selected on the interchange for Burleigh Bears.
Not Lorenzo Talatina, the other Lorenzo.
Sorry, Lorenzo Militalo.
Militalo is on the extended bench there.
See, this is where the brain takes over, right? You get so used to saying
we've talked about Lorenzo a lot, yeah.
Yes. So Lorenzo Militalo. My apologies there for anyone who was having maybe having a stroke or a heart attack just then at the thought that maybe Lorenzo Talatina had signed elsewhere for next year. No, Lorenzo Militalo, who of course was playing with Parramatta last year, having come up through Ron Massey Cup at Wenty to make his first grade debut with the Eels last year, and he signed with the Burleigh Bears for this season, and he's on the interchange bench for them in the grand final. John, the only other thing I wanted to touch on was there's been a lot of discussion coming up because it's been out there in the news lately about Ryan Madison and Bailey Simonson, about what's likely to happen with them. I wrote about it in the Bumpers Up because both of them are contracted to Parramatta next year. Now, I'm sure the Eels were looking at Maddo extending his time over there in the English Super League, and it looks like that's not going to come to fruition, and he's returning to Australia. And if he's returning to Australia, unless something out of the blue happens in terms of a contract offer, he'll be running around for Parramatta. Now, he's on quite a lucrative deal with Parramatta, so I guess if you haven't been playing first grade during this season, you're not putting yourself in the shop window, and it's going to be, look, if you have to be honest with things like that, it's going to be no hope that anyone's going to come forward with an offer that's anything like the contract that the Eels will have him on next year. It's just not going to happen. So unless there is something that is worked out, unless the Eels stump up quite a lot of freight for his contract, in which case what they'd mainly be getting would be the roster spot rather than making any sort of cap money.
The other thing too in this situation is the faster the Eels can reach a decision on potentially moving him, the better, because that means the more space you will have pro rata, right? The more he plays, the more teams will be able to leverage you for having paid most of his salary up to a certain point. So if you're gonna move him, you need to be decisive, and that might mean eating more than you'd like to when it comes to that potential cap hit. But you would imagine that they're going to be pretty judicious on that call, because I don't think maybe they'll let him be a backup, Craig. Who knows? He would be a pretty handy backup. He'd be a pretty handy frontliner if he had bought in. But yeah, as it stands, it's hard to see him turning out for the blue and gold next year. But the question is, what do they do? Who can they work with to find a potential partner here?
Well, I'll tell you what it reminds me of, John. It reminds me of Nathan Brown's situation when he left the club. So Nathan Brown finished the season in the grand final in 2022, but the mail was very strong then that he wouldn't be with the club in 2023. He turned up for the preseason. He was doing his preseason training, but the mail didn't go away that he would be playing elsewhere in 2023. And as it turned out, it almost got to the start of the season itself before he was officially moved on. And that, of course, meant that the Eels were paying his salary up to that time when he left. And as you say, that doesn't help the situation at all, because not only in the case of Ryan Madison are we expecting that nobody's going to come along with an offer that's near what the contract that the Eels have him on for a start. So we'll already be paying some freight, is that the longer that it goes on, the more of that contract we're paying anyway. So it just eats further and further into any salary cap benefit that might be gained by Maddo moving on. Now, you mentioned, well, he may end up playing with the club for the year if no one takes him on, and that he would be a handy backup there. I guess what it comes down to there is how Maddo himself sees the situation. Now, if he sees the situation as a point to prove, we know how single-minded he can be. Like, if he's determined that this isn't going to be how his career finishes, you'd expect that he would turn up. Look, we know Maddo spends a lot of time in the gym, but it's all about mobility these days with the forwards. So you would expect that he would turn up ready to go for the sort of role that Jason Riles and his coaches want the forwards to play. And we saw Junior strip off all that weight so that he could play that sort of role. And he was just ripping in from even before the preseason started. And he was almost, by the end of the preseason, he was almost unrecognisable in terms of his body shape. to what he'd been before. And we saw the sort of season that he put behind him as a result of that. So, I think it all then comes down to if Maddo ends up staying with the Eels, ball's in his court.
Yep.
About whether he wants to finish his career like that, because if he ends up playing the season in New South Wales Cup, the chances of him getting a decent contract elsewhere, even though he'd be no longer under contract, would be slim.
Michael's got an ultimatum for Madison from the club: pay a fine or leave.
Yes, if there's a point in time for Maddo where he'd probably want to go back and just undo everything, it would probably be that point in time.
No doubt. And I still think that the entire process behind it stunk a little bit insofar as he was given the Monday of that following grand final to make his call, and obviously made the wrong call. But when he tried to backtrack it, obviously with the club maybe talking to him, he was given no avenue but to take the suspension, which, I don't know, just the whole thing.
It sucked, because what we've seen this year is there's been flexibility
afforded
with decisions that have been made, and downgrades that have come, and negotiations almost between clubs with regard to suspensions and downgrades, because the resulting injury wasn't as bad. Like when there was the and like, when has that ever come in? Like in terms of the decision, like with a charge. So we know that flexibility is possible, and way back then there was like 4 or 5 months where flexibility could have been allowed.
Last game of the season, had to put your plea in the Monday of following the grand final. Did he put the wrong plea in? Of course, like that, and that's where the root problem was. But but like you said, I think that's where, at least with the fan base in particular, the relationship soured. A lot of people, understandably, did not agree, justifiably did not agree. And since then, the change in the meta game too with forwards. And look, Madison's still got the kind of athleticism that can work in the modern game, in the current meta game, but didn't obviously marry well to the Jason Rolls principles, and found himself on the outside looking in for a pretty transformed forward pack. So maybe they can work something out. If not, they'd have to work something out somewhere else.
Now, the interesting one, John, is Bailey Simonson, because his scenario really came out of the blue, didn't it? And it was one that was totally unexpected by Eels fans, because Bailey was a genuine fan favourite at that point. And to have his apparent request for a release broadcast on
NRL Tonight,
on the Fox Sports News, the NRL Tonight, was it caught everybody by surprise.
Ill-advised in general,
and no doubt it would have been a scenario that put not just supporters offside, but you're not. There's no telling tales out of school to suggest that the club wouldn't have been happy about it, or his teammates wouldn't have been happy about it. That's just common sense that it would have pissed people off under those circumstances. So there's been no departure as yet. I think he might stay, John. I think he's going to be a situation where he might stay.
Look, it would help. We've been talking about the need to recruit an outside back to facilitate his place in the roster, the replacement for his place in the roster. So if he does stay, you get a proven NRL starter plus guy that's fighting for a spot alongside Penasini and Russell in the centres, presumably. And that would help a lot, because you'd rather the bird in hand that can play to a high level in your system, rather than have to go find the guy to replace him that maybe has issues or maybe he's better, maybe he isn't. So at least in the short term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But where, of course, all of this complicates things for Parramatta is I think a lot of supporters were counting on salary cap coin to spend. And if we get these players still with the Eels next year, there isn't the cap space there that many supporters would have been expecting. It's not to say that the Eels won't make signings. I think there will be a signing or two that will be announced in the not too distant future, but I don't think we're going to necessarily get the level of signings that supporters might have been hoping for. Now, we've talked about it before. Where are the Eels at in terms of their current roster strength? And when we talked with Bernie about it, he said, the roster itself was on the way up, but it was still a couple of significant signings short of taking the club to the next level. So he said we had to get the next couple of external signings right to really start to move up the ladder and to make an authentic challenge for the title. So it will be interesting to see what does transpire, John, because maybe that coin's not going to necessarily be available till 27. So
it would be interesting. Obviously, we're not privy to the actual cap breakdown, but excuse me. It would be interesting to look at how we would evaluate our roster construction, because people in chat, I see Michael there sort of quizzing about where did Dylan's money go, and you talk about those upgrades, and it does add up quicker than you'd think. So maybe there's some sort of thought experiment there to look at how that money could have been assigned, because when you start picking up guys in the midfield, that's where your cap starts to eat away very quickly. Way quicker than you think, and bearing in mind that we do have a halfback who, while he is absolutely worthy of the contract, is on top of the market rate, and we've got a prop forward in junior who's on big money as well. So that hurts your cap, and hurts your cap. That is a significant portion of your cap allocated there. So yeah, it would be interesting to see where we would think the money would be going to put us in the situation where maybe contingent on Ryan Madison not coming back to the Parramatta Eels, we might be able to make a major move.
John, maybe what we also need to look back on is at this time last year, Clint Gutherson was still with the Eels. And although there was starting to become speculation about what his future was like at the Eels, he was literally with the club until we got quite close to the end of the off season, just before the preseason started. And I remember talking with you about it last year and saying that they really needed to sort it out before that preseason started, because if you've got someone there who's not destined to be there, it's a disruption to have them as part of the squad. So if we look back on the experience last year, the Eels were able to make it happen in that period of time between the end of the season and the start of the preseason. So maybe if players aren't part of the plans for next year, that there's still time to make it happen. And as you said before, John, we start paying the next year's contract from November 1. So there's a little bit of wiggle room until we hit November 1. Not much, but still just a little bit of wiggle room time. Yep. So, look, that just about wraps up the Parramatta side of things. Have we got any questions before I head to you for your
Chris wanted me to make sure I got to you with this one. He wants me to ask you what your thoughts were on the stats he gave you on X or Twitter regarding the Eels and Panthers similarities, which I imagine have something to do with junior success maybe predicating NRL success.
Let me just go back into those stats as well, because I remember Chris sending me some stats, but I want to have it fresh in my mind here as well.
The salary cap stuff's interesting, guys, and like we said in the discussion just then, that once you start doing those upgrades, and the Eels did have a number of guys have upgraded and re-signed long term, your roster space does sort of chip away quicker than you'd think. But maybe there is still room for a signing that we're not accounting for. I have to wait and see. Obviously, Ryan Madison and Barry Simonson still in the books is you're talking about $1 million plus right there. So that would obviously facilitate a completely different situation. But yeah, that's
Oh, look, I'm just having a look here. I can't remember whether that was in a private message, Chris.
Chris, was that just open messaging? Would you just tag him and then send it to him? And Chris Hill saying, how many players should we be chasing? 1 or 2 more? That probably sounds about right. I would say it's in that 1 to 2 bracket, assuming that again, Madison and Simonson are there or thereabouts.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. 1 or 2 more.
Yeah.
But yeah, what are those stats? I haven't got it in the private messages there, so maybe it was something that was sent in the main messages, which might be a little bit hard to find unless it was today. I was sure that I'd read it last week.
Jazz, just to clarify, it's not news of Zach Lomax. It's a rumor at this stage.
Yes.
So don't take that as a given that he is gone.
No. We only mentioned it because it was a rumor, and Braithen Astor mentioned it as a rumor.
Yeah.
Today. So hang on, here we go.
Oh yeah. So Para 81 to 86, 4 grand final wins, 1 grand final loss, 1 prelim loss. Oh, so it's the actual run itself. Yeah, okay. So Eels of 81 to 86 won their 4 titles, obviously 81, 83, and 86. Had a grand final loss and a prelim loss. Penrith from 20 to 25 started with a grand final loss, had the 4 in a row, so 4 grand finals, and then had a prelim loss this year. So, some shared history there between the Eels and Panthers, between Penrith and Parramatta. That is pretty funny.
I could not have taken Penrith going one more.
Yeah,
this year just would have been.
We were joking around in the chat before that it is the greatest evil being exiled or purged from the final series, but unfortunately, there's 2 pretty big lesser evils left in Melbourne and Brisbane. But you take what you can get, and the end of the Panthers dynasty, at least temporarily, thankfully, comes to a suspension, we'll call it, not an end. But thank you to the Broncos for doing that. Andrew asks, has the Tino and Keon window gone for next year? That was always real optimistic on everyone's end in terms of those discussions, but I would say don't go expecting that kind of signing. But then again, if you do move Madison, then who knows? All the real big marquee sort of territory forward signing is completely predicated on Ryan Madison finding a home somewhere else.
My take on this, John, is look, there's been rumours about the Eels signing back rowers. If they sign a back rower, it has to be significant. We've talked about this before because the Eels, I think, have talent in the back row.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think there is already competition. To sign someone, they would have to be signing someone who is better because, as I said, there's competition for places. There are players who are flexible as well about whether they play middle or back row. So we've got that. We've got that there as part of the depth. So I think it has to be a really, really significant. John, I keep getting people messaging me. You might have heard the phone go off.
Is it more Zach Lomax? People hitting you about Zach Lomax?
Yeah. It's just been non-stop, the messaging
about
that.
Look, we're not saying that it's absolutely not true, but we're saying it is very much in the rumor stage right now. It was not off the cuff, but it was a quick statement from Braithen Astor saying he's heard a rumor. So look, it's not the first time Lomax has been linked to rugby union, to the was it Rugby 360? But bearing in mind, Rugby 360 is still not a ratified competition. It still does not meet the requirements of the RLIF? No, not RL. Whatever the International Rugby Union Federation is. It's still in that nebulous stage of we got lots of money.
Is it IRU?
IRU? Yeah, IRU. International Rugby Union, yeah.
Look, John, I think the thing is with this, we know that there are some rumours that become self-perpetuating.
Yeah,
they get a lot
exactly. And look, they're meant to be starting September next year, Craig. They're not even certified. They haven't recruited. They haven't got teams, like actual branded teams. So
yes,
maybe it happens. Maybe it doesn't. I would not be losing sleep over it right now.
Yeah, look, it's look. I guess the thing is with that, and we spoke about this. Oops, sorry. My apologies. My phone's going off here. With these sorts of things, we debated about whether we spoke about it, based on the messages that were being sent to us. But then we had the situation where it was mentioned on 360.
Yeah.
And then because it was mentioned on 360, we thought, okay, this is us putting our head in the sand if we don't actually address it and have our say on it.
Yep.
We're having our say on it as a rumour.
You look at from our perspective as fans, both in the chat and with us here, the Eels are giving Zach no reason to be unhappy. We're a club on the rise. He's playing representative football with Parramatta. He'll be part of the Kangaroos tour, almost certainly going to the Ashes. So if he leaves, it's because he's just got an absurd cash offer from the Rebel, assuming that they get off the ground, the Rebel rugby concept. And again,
yes,
they don't even have teams formed yet. Like they don't have the whatever Reds or something Blues. You know, they haven't got even squads to be recruiting to right now. They're just being linked to players.
I wonder if they get like those contracts that are like a statement of intent or a indication of intent or that sort of thing, that if they were to, you know, leave their current contract, because this is the other thing that supposedly was coming out with this Rugby 360 was that they didn't want players to break contracts. And I'm sure I was reading or hearing something about that last week, that it wasn't a case of that they were going to go in and just pinch players. It was a case of if players are off contract, they'll be offered deals. They're not going to go about putting other competitions offside by just going in and getting them to break contracts, break deals, because I mean that's not great business sense, really, is it? To have the history of an organisation based on
that was from Mike,
getting stars to break deals.
Mike in chat saying that was from Michael Chammas, apparently. That was where that statement came from, that they didn't want to get into that contractual shit fight. So look, unfortunately something to monitor now. It's not going to be a fun storyline to get on top of, and you know how these things are for rumours, that they start spreading through social media and Facebook, and then the media then start running with it more and more. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe Lomax and Eels come out and quash this. Who knows? But another bit of spicy stuff to follow in the off-season, I guess.
Yeah. So, John, that takes us through the Eels news, and it's time for your musical interlude.
Yeah, well, the Brisbane Broncos shut the door on the Penrith Panthers in their quest for 5 in a row. And fittingly, it set up the Ponies versus the Storm. And what better song than a bit of a banger from the Doors with our Riders on the Storm.
Riders on the Storm.
Got an audio balancing there. Now, it's cars in the video clip, but let's just pretend it's ponies and horses trying to race out a storm there.
Into this world without, like a dog without a bone, and actor out alone. Riders on the storm.
John, I've got a question for you with the lyrics now. Which NRL player or players that take the field on Sunday would have brains squirming like a toad?
Look, he's got no way of knocking out a mate and drinking toilet water, so if there was a player who could get away with the brain squirming like a toad, it would be Reece Walsh. No doubt about it, it would be Reece Walsh, would it?
That was the one that came to mind.
Oh, Lord.
Maybe the only one from Melbourne who might challenge that might be Munster.
Yeah, Cam Munster be up there too for sure.
I couldn't resist that, mate. Not with riders on the Storm.
Sharp. And yes, as fitting a song as I could find for the upcoming match between the Melbourne Broncos, Melbourne Storm and Brisbane Broncos.
So, John, we had the team lists come out today. I think there was basically no changes with that, but with the exception, I think, of Tulty. For the
Ben
Broncos
Tulty dropping out for Garrigan, yeah.
So just before we get on to what we think is going to happen in this game, what were your takes on the two matches last week?
Look, on totality, and I know that it's been a bit of a discussion point in other more high-profile NRL media shows, but barring that game between the Broncos, between the Bulldogs and the Penrith Panthers, this might be the best final series, pound-for-pound, game-for-game we've had in a long time. And I think that the two grand final qualifiers, the two preliminary finals, lived up to it. Cronulla Sharks had a good tussle down there in Melbourne. Unfortunately, their spine, outside of Will Kennedy, who had a great try assist early on, but I think their spine wilted a little bit. And then the game between the Broncos and the Panthers was electric. Like the Panthers squandering a 14-point lead. How often do you see that?
Beautiful.
I mean, it was poetry, but how often do you see that? Reece Walsh missing a kick that anyone between me, you, and Chat could have thrown over, and then handing it over to Adam Reynolds for the clutch sideline redemption conversion. From the grand final back in 23, where he couldn't kick at the end of the game to push that lead out. Like these two games really good. Obviously, the game on Sunday was the pinnacle of the two of them. Incredibly intense, a lot of physicality, some generous officiating in terms of the sin bin. There was a strong argument that both Nathan Cleary and Liam Martin could have been binned, and maybe Ezra Mam too if you want to do the 2-for-1 sort of thing there. But they let both teams get away with it, and it was an area where he copped some criticism of Michael Maguire of the intensity that he commandeers a team with. But it was the reason why he was such an ideal fit for the Broncos, is that he is a guy that can get short-term results out of a roster of how he really extracts as much as he can from players with that physicality and intensity. And that's what the difference was. You saw Payne Haas play 80 minutes and chase Nathan Cleary down at the end to prevent the 2-point conversion attempt, which, by the way, that was completely un-Penrith-like. They were way out of sync on that sequence. I know earlier this year they'd gotten cute with the big, deep pass from Mitch Kenny to Cleary for the 2-point field goal. Was it Mudgee? Was that the Mudgee game? I can't remember which game it was. They got away with it against the Titans, maybe? And they tried to emulate that in this one, but it was just shonky, and Cleary had the run for his life, fling it to Edwards, who rushed the kick and came nowhere near it. So, I thought Penrith in that second half were rattled. This isn't a criticism of Cleary as a finals player, because we know he's a Clive Churchill medalist, had that game against Brisbane where he took over the game, but his short kicking game in the second half was dismal. He completely lost range. He could not find a way between the front line. The trap and scrap got him multiple times. He had the bat down that was essentially a try assist to big Xavier Willison when they attacked that short side. So, a rather forgettable game or second half there for one of the game's best players.
Yeah, John, I spoke and wrote about Penrith last week. I feared them winning. Sounds a strange thing to say, feared them winning.
If they'd gotten through this hurdle, I think they win it all still. And that is just why it was so important for the Broncos to get up over them. And they did. Credit to the Broncos.
The reason that I feared it was that I truly regarded this Penrith team as the weakest team in the last 6 years.
Of their run? Yeah, no
on
doubt.
Their run, yep. I'll say it again. I said it before, I'll say it again. If you look at the Penrith team from the 2022 grand final that Parramatta had to face.
That was their prime. I know we're born gold biased. That was the best Penrith roster they had during their run.
Oh, and look at all those players that are no longer with the Panthers. You cannot tell me that the Panthers team of the last 2 years compares to that particular Penrith team. Maybe last year was like the last vestige of it before the likes of Luai and Taruva and James Fisher-Harris moved on. But as soon as you got those players. And what we're talking about with these players that have left Penrith over since 2022, they've lost mongrel.
Yeah.
They've lost the players there that are the assholes, the mongrels, the ones that are
that really made them tick in these big games too.
Yeah, like supporters hate those particular players, like opposing supporters, with a passion. But they were a key to Penrith's arrogance and I'll invent a word, assholiness out there on the field, and you just can't replace that. It's like when Parramatta lost Pricey. Like Pricey was a great player, but he was also a mongrel out there on the field. You know, he would get in people's faces. He'd just be, he was just the ultimate competitor. I mean, even to the extent that he would threaten his own team if they left about leaving the club. I mean, he played for keeps. And when Pricey left the Eels, we couldn't make the finals for another 10, 11 years. So when Penrith lost this collection of players, it was just the tipping point last year.
Yeah, Leota and Lenu, Jamie, absolutely, they were the difference on the day.
Yeah.
They were huge in that game. And just looking at that Penrith team, their effective tackle rate was down at 86%, Craig. Multiple missed tackles for so many players. 4 for Tungwall and McLean, 3 for To'o, 6 for Blaze, 3 for Leota, 3 for Smith, 7 for Liam Martin, 6 for Ice, Isaiah Papali'i, and 5 for Luke Garner. Like, that's not how Penrith do business. And again, it speaks towards a decline in the team, in that mongrelness, like you said, that rabid factor that they had in these big games where they would just find a level of physicality that their opposition could not go with. And it was Brisbane that did it to them instead.
John, their defence all season was not of its best.
No.
They improved in a period of time after they got the better of us. And they had to struggle to get the better of us. But when they were running last, their stats matched a team that was running last. Like, defensively, they were awful.
Yeah, they were bleeding 30 points a game. Yeah.
And they didn't, to an extent, they didn't improve to the level of a premiership team after that point. And even if the points weren't ultimately scored, you knew that they were missing a lot of tackles. Even like the week before, Nathan Cleary missed something like 6 tackles himself.
He did.
But Liam Martin has been missing a lot of tackles this year. I'd be interested to see what his stats for the year are in terms of his.
I wonder if
But I am sure he has had a very ordinary year in terms of his.
He's down at 89% tackle efficiency on the season, which the elite back rows tend to be in the low 90s, at least based on the small analysis I've done in the past, looking at sort of player pieces and whatnot. But yeah, it's definitely a down season. He's a lot of missed tackles. Looking at this, I mean, he topped out at 10 against the Cowboys back in round 5, but he's had multiple missed tackles in every game barring 3. So it's not been a great defensive year for Liam Martin. And look, he is a guy that will put the effort in on kick chases to make the big push up and maybe gets beaten on a tackle here and there when it comes to that thing. But yeah, defensively not been at the standard he would have held himself to, and Penrith in general. So not a shock that they were bundled out by the Brisbane Broncos in this one, although they did have the ascendancy and a lot of questions about whether they should have taken the 2 a couple of times, mate. I know. That was like the divisive one, everyone's lounge or living room, lounge room while they're watching the game. It did end up costing. But in saying that 14-point lead also didn't factor in Reece Walsh missing a throw over. So if they'd taken the 2, does Reece Walsh kick the 2 with those butterfly effect ripples? Who knows? But thank God they're just out. And it's not even about being Parramatta's rivals, being the little brother down the road. You don't want to see any team, unless it's Parramatta, dominate for that long. It just gets so boring. So boring.
Oh, look, it does, John, but you know what? It is personal for me. It is really personal for me because...
Look, I was giving you the out if you wanted to, but I know you've got a dark and sordid history of attending Penrith Park games and their fandom not being the most hospitable.
Look, I know that every fan base has its morons, and there is no club out there that doesn't have a share of those sorts of people, right? But my God, did I find them every time I went to watch Parramatta against Penrith. Look, by the same token, there are some great Penrith supporters. We know that there's some great Penrith supporters. I've met some of them as well. But in all honesty, the ones that in the last 10 years made any trip to Penrith Park just and we're not talking about feeling uncomfortable at a ground because you're the visiting supporters. We're talking about people that go and are hostile and make threats and throw things at you.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference between the rivalry and a bit of shit talking that goes on between opposition fans in a code and the feral sort of stuff that goes on that way.
Yeah. And it got to the point where I was raising it with the club about, look, surely there is something that can be done at a club level, at a club executive level, just approaching on behalf of the fan base, because supporters shouldn't have been put through some of the stuff that would happen, especially at Penrith Park. And I stopped going there at the end of, I don't think I've been there since 22. Apart from maybe junior rep games, that sort of thing. Like, I don't have a problem with junior rep games because, like, you're not going to deal with lunatics at that level. But so John, for me, it was personal. I am glad that they were out. They've been a generational team, and their time is done. Will they continue to be a presence in finals football? Probably.
Oh, look, if they featured in next year's grand final, you would not be shocked. They've still got plenty of time on the roster, but you'd like to think that
have question marks over some of their players, John.
And don't underestimate the importance of them being shown that they are mortal to the rest of the competition is when it comes to future knockout games in the finals.
Look, Ivan Cleary would be all over the fact that they've literally seen that they're not invincible. And it was a lot has been made of their run to get to the finals, and a lot of praise for that run of football that they had. I don't care. They didn't make it. They didn't make it all the way, And I'm going to be I'm not going to be nasty about it, but I'm going to be happy that they didn't. We can acknowledge a great football team, and as I said, that 22 team. I would argue that the Parramatta teams of 21 and 22, and probably some of the teams that were in the grand finals against Penrith in 21 and 23 and 24 would have wiped the floor with this year's Penrith team. Yeah. And that's not being disrespectful. That's just they were that far off the pace compared to previous year's Penrith teams. That's just how it was. They were off the pace. They had some good moments, but they were nowhere near the team that they were before.
I don't think that's unreasonable. Like we said, this is the most mortal they've been the entire run, going back to when they first lost against Melbourne, which was a really young and hungry and precocious team that had all their young stars, and versus where they are now, where they've been forced to go to the market and find answers externally, which they've never had to do. Like they've recruited smart during the process. They've never had to go out and find a key playmaker like Blaze, or go out and find an impact forward like Ice. So, yeah.
Yeah. John, the other one that you spoke about with the Penrith, the Melbourne and Cronulla game, what I particularly liked was the brutal honesty of Craig Fitzgibbon after the game and basically saying, look, we didn't have a good enough season to be premiers.
Yes.
But they finished outside the top four. and that it just made everything harder for themselves because they had to go on a run of wins to ensure that they got into the finals, and then that they were always, I guess, they were always chasing their tail through the season in terms of, they could have made things easier for themselves. They could have played a bit better during the season. Then they might have been considered as worthy. He literally was saying, and tell me if I'm wrong in interpreting this, but he was literally saying the sort of things that the Sharks were being criticised about anyway, that they weren't really premiership contenders. He's literally said they didn't have a good enough season to be premiership contenders, and it behoves them next year to have a better season to actually put themselves in contention. So I thought that was, and maybe I interpreted his statements incorrectly, but that's certainly how I interpreted it. And I thought it was refreshingly honest, and that they got beaten by the better team on the night, a team that's basically worthy of being in the grand final. And they've got a bit of work to do next year to get themselves to that level. So now we come to this week's game, John. We won't go into too much depth about it because we keep an eye on the time, make sure we don't spend too much, don't go into the 2-hour bracket with but it is a grand final. We do need to offer
talk some turkey
things.
Yep.
Neither team is a favourite of ours. It's as you've said before, it's the lesser of a couple of evils where we don't have to worry about the Panthers winning another title. For me, I'm actually just going to sit back and not care too much about who wins it, because I really, in one sense, I don't care. Like, I really don't. I'm not fond of either team, but I don't hate one more than the other. So I'm just going to sit back and whatever happens, happens, and hopefully it's a good game of football that I can enjoy. How do you see it, mate?
Yeah, look, I've got family coming over. We're going to do a big, I think we're doing ribs and chicken. So we're going to have a good day and have a bit of fun watching the footy. And that's all you can hope for, is that it's a good game. I saw Blocker tipping the Broncos by 13+, which I thought was an outrageous tip. Just not for tipping the Broncos, but 13+ in a grand final is incredibly rare. I think this is going to be pretty hard fought. I think, talking to Bernie, and I did agree with him then and still agree now, is that the Melbourne Storm this year, much like how we talk about Penrith, aren't the Penrith that we've seen in the past. Melbourne aren't either the Melbourne of the past. Like, they are gettable. This isn't a game they're going to come out here and just dominate because they're the best team. I think the Broncos absolutely have the strike power. I don't know about putting Ezra Mam on the bench. I know it worked against Penrith. Like, it worked. Like, he came on and missed a tackle. I just think you should start Mam, shift Ben Hunt to hooker, and then not overcomplicate your bench rotation. But I don't know. They get Pat Carrigan back fresh. He's going to be reinvigorated after spending a week on the sidelines, a bit of a nervous wait from the high contact in that game against Canberra. So he'll be the fresh legs in this one. I lean towards Brisbane right now. I think they've got enough momentum. They've got the X factor. They've got the wound to try and exercise too from 23. And I know you can say the same thing for Melbourne last year, but Melbourne have won titles recently, like going back to pre-Penrith times. Before, instead of before Comedy or BC, it's before Penrith. So in this case, I think that the Broncos are probably they're the team, as dirty as it sounds, they're the team I want to win it out of the two. I would much rather the Broncos win, even though that would mean that they break their drought from 2006. And
because it's nice to have another club with a drought.
Yeah. Look, there's more than a few of them in the NRL, by the way. Just the Parramatta Eels always cop the short end of the stick because they've got the longest as it stands right now. The longest, again, asterisk with cheating, having denied them from clearing out that debt. But Josh is in chat saying, would you risk Mam's hammy for paying for the 80? Look, it's one game of the season left. I think you have to, right? If the hammy's not good enough for 40, it wouldn't be good enough for 80. Or vice versa. If it's not good enough for 80, it's not good enough for 40. So I would. That's how I would do it. I don't like Mam off the bench. I just think that's getting cute. And Ben Hunt is a 80-minute hooker. At least I think he still can be an 80-minute hooker. It opens up the spot. It doesn't open up a spot on your bench in that regard, but it just tidies up your bench rotations. You don't have to waste a bench rotation. And who knows? In a big game like this, if you cop some injuries or you have to rotate your forwards, you could end up a rotation short because you've had to put in your 5/8, like your first string 5/8 from the bench. So, but yeah, looking at those two, mate, definitely backing Brisbane here, but would not be shocked if Melbourne got the win, and that would suck.
Yeah, well, John, I think the interesting thing the thing I'm waiting for at the end of the game is all the stories to come out about the players that shouldn't have played. Much like when Cooper Cronk was playing for the Roosters, and then the game's over, and it's like, oh, he had this gap, however many centimetres,
separated
the
shoulder
blade was separated, and all those sorts of things. So I'm sure the Jerome Hughes, the details of that injury, the truth about that will come out, and any other players that are in doubt or have hidden their injuries, we'll find out more about that after the game's over. But I look at it this way. Where I believe that Melbourne were going to win comfortably against Cronulla last week, and maybe it wasn't quite as comfortable as what I thought it was going to be, but you look at their spine and you go, okay, they haven't all been on the same page in every game. But essentially, those four players read from the same book. And you only need a couple of games from them where they are on the same page for them now to win the title. And they did it last week. And I noticed there were times in the game where you'd see those four talking, like in conversation about the game, and you just think to yourself, this really is the key to Melbourne, those four players. It was like back in the day with Billy Slater and Cam Smith and Cooper Cronk and Greg Inglis, and you just looked at those and you just went, okay, they're the big guns, and they often, even if they've been inconsistent through a season, this is what they play for. It's for grand finals, and they missed out last year. That would be burning badly for them, much the same as the Broncos would be burning from 2 years ago. But those four players, mate, they are just they're just so good in their roles and do so well as a combination as well. And you saw the difference that it made with Jerome Hughes playing. Look, Pezzett he's an absolute player of the future, but the fact that the Storm would risk playing Jerome Hughes last week says to you that, look, they thought they were a chance of not winning if they didn't play.
Look at the difference he made in the game too, I suppose.
Oh,
so
yeah, he was just about best on field, if not actually the best on field. The Broncos, not crazy about their spine, but what they have are freaks in their team. So they got Payne Haas, who's a freak. And, of course, they got Reece Walsh, who's a freak.
And don't sleep on Katoni Staggs out in the centres, who's also
no,
a freak.
I'm not sleeping on Katoni Staggs, but he's not quite in the freak territory. He's in the elite player territory, but Haas and Walsh can do things on their own that can turn a match. Like just even if the team isn't in sync with them. And this is where I think there's a difference. Like I talked about the Melbourne spine. Now the Melbourne spine work well together, but they keep that team functioning as a well-oiled machine when they're all playing well. The Broncos could win it on the back of individual efforts. If this makes sense to you, like I see the Melbourne spine as absolutely critical, but I spoke about that as being getting on the same page for that day. I don't think the Broncos have to all be on the same page in attack, because I think they've got blokes like Haas and Reece Walsh who can just do freakish things. And then, as you said, John, you've got someone like Katoni Staggs who will take half or quarter chances and turn them into genuine try-scoring moments. And I know we had Bernie on talking about his predictions. I tell you, another player that Bernie's a big fan of is Dean Mariner, and he's talked to me a number of times about Mariner.
Big. I mean, Reece Walsh got all the credit for the great run and offload, but Mariner had to not go out, get the ball back in hand, and beat all that sliding defense to get over and help win the game. Well, just about win the game for the Broncos. So yeah, he had a big moment there. And I don't mind saying this. I don't think I'm talking out of school. That I reckon it's been for the last couple of years that Bernie's spoken to me and said, this would be a player I'd love the Eels to go after in Dean Mariner. You know, he's had huge raps on him for a while, and he may well turn out to, just as he scored the match winner on the weekend, he may well be the one who provides the match-winning moment this week. You're going for the Broncos. I'm going to go for the Storm. I just think, look, as I said, I have nothing about either team that I like. I was cheering for the Broncos last weekend simply because I was booing the Panthers. And I was cheering for the Storm last week because I thought whichever team wins out of the Broncos and the Panthers, if they're facing the Sharks, they've got the premiership wrapped up. So I just didn't want the Sharks to get through simply because I thought they weren't a genuine chance of winning the title if they had to scrape through into the grand final. So I'm happy in one sense that this is the grand final that we've ended up with. Do you reckon, I mean, how much more motivation do you need? But do you reckon the Brisbane Broncos are clipping Stefano Utoikamanu comments about them being a bit stuck up and how he's going to knock them over from the opening kickoff?
Look, I reckon they would have been ready to rip into Stefano anyway.
Exactly.
Because he was making enough statements with his play last week that they know that he's the player they were going to have to shut down.
Big. That was probably his best game of his career last week. Like, he's had better statistical games, but given the context, given how much they needed him to stand up, I thought he was tremendous. And you know what? Again, I'm someone that covers American sports as a fan, so I'm far more used to the shit talking being part of the process. But it is a bit fun that it wasn't even shit talk. Like, it really wasn't even shit talk. But having a little bit of spiciness early on in the week, it's great for the lead up. And it lets the media have a bit of fun. And I'm sure that the Broncos will hit back at some point during their press cycle. So I'm all for it. You know, well done to Stefano for kicking up a bit of a beehive there. And
it's sad to see a former Parramatta player doing so well elsewhere.
Did you see the headline about him doing his time at the West Tigers? Sound like the man had done a jail. The article had a little bit more nuance. It wasn't as sensationalist as that, but it sounded like a man that had just been put on parole from jail or prison and getting to go live his life and get to a grand final after a few years at the Tigers.
So look, let's also have our predictions about the NRLW grand final and also the Australian club. What do they call it? The club championship? Is that what they call it?
It is the club championship now.
Yeah. So anyway, the NRLW, John, the elephant in the room is that we've ended up with two super clubs in the grand final. If you couldn't predict that the Roosters and the Broncos were going to be the grand final teams at the start of the year, I don't know whether you knew too much about the NRLW or the respective teams. Now, I know that it ended up being a bit closer with the Roosters and the Sharks, but let's face it, the Roosters lost a key player in Taron Aiken just before the final series. With Taron Aiken, the Roosters were, as the season showed, unbeatable. Like, just completely unbeatable. We watched her dismantle the Eels late in the season. And I said to Yoko, watch the Roosters half and what she does in this game. Watch her just dismantle Parramatta, because she will take the ball to the line in two hands. The players will hang off her, and she will decide whether she's going to run herself or put a player through the line. And it was literally like you could have taken her play in that game and just put it into a coaching manual for how to play as a playmaker in not just in women's rugby league, but in rugby league in general. So looking then at these two teams, Roosters undefeated during the season. Broncos only one loss, that coming against the Roosters. The Roosters, since losing Taryn Aiken,
they looked
the
very
Broncos.
They looked very beatable on the weekend, Craig. Like Taryn Aiken, the Roosters, yeah. Taryn Aiken is a huge out. Like what a
it's a massive out.
And Jocelyn Kelleher did a good job replacing her, but that is just the standard. It's Parramatta losing Mitchell Moses. But Mitchell Moses has an all-star supporting cast in this case with the Roosters.
Yes, Look, the Roosters back line, it's insane, right? The players that are in the back line. But once you take Taryn Aiken out and then you line them up against the Broncos, who are also full of stars, including the freak of the NRLW in Upton. And look, I would have predicted the Roosters to go through and take the title and be undefeated for the season prior to the injury to Taryn Aiken. In my way of thinking, the Broncos get this, and provided they stick to their guns, and I say that because they try to get a bit fancy on the weekend, and they were full of errors in that second half against the Knights, and it was a very ordinary second half of football. After a great first half, it was substandard for that level of football and for the level of players that were out there for the Broncos. But look at their back line, and then look at who's at the back of their back line. And, like, seriously.
I mean,
I actually think they will win the grand final comfortably.
On projected form, Brisbane really are the favourites. And I always hate using the betting line. They haven't got the betting line up yet. Hang on a sec. No betting line? Okay. I think they're pretty firm favourites, Craig. Like, they've got a very well-rounded team. And if the Roosters were at full strength, it's a completely different conversation. I think they are the firm favourites. And I would not be surprised if the Roosters won, because they still have plenty of talent. And they do get back some big ins. Aaliyah Nasio on the edge is huge. I think she had a one-game suspension, and she pushes former Eel Tina Navidi back to the wing, who's had a real breakout season, actually, playing between wing and back row and a few other spots, I think. But I look at that Brisbane team, and like you said, Tamika Upton at the back, still the best fullback in the game. And, you know, we talk about the Roosters' star-studded backline, but Hufanga and Robinson are a pretty handy centre pairing. Johnson and Manick are pretty good in the wings too. And while there is no, while the Roosters are missing their star halfback, you look at Broughton and Brigginshaw in return, and I think that they're maybe slightly head in the halves now, because Baxter's a fullback by trade, playing 5'8", and Kelleher stepping in there at halfback is solid and good. Like, solid's disrespectful, good, but not the superstar level of playmaking. So, yeah, I think that the Broncos are warm favourites here.
Yeah. Then we go to the New South Wales Cup. Well, not the New South Wales Cup, the Club Championship.
National Championship.
Yeah. So we've got the Warriors against the Burleigh Bears. We'd obviously, from a sentimental perspective, like to see Luke Burt get the title in his coaching capacity there for Burleigh Bears.
I would be. Look, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but I'll be shocked if this one's close, based on what we've seen from the Warriors this year. That's one of the strongest Cup teams I've seen in a while.
Yeah, we're talking about not just players that have been playing first grade with that Warriors team. We're talking about players who are on the rise to a big career in first grade, who are just happened to be back in that New South Wales Cup team for the Warriors, and no one got close to them during the season as far as their position on the table. They had the hiccup in the finals game. The Dragons played exceptionally well in that grand final qualifier where they got the better of the Warriors, but it was normal programming resumed in the grand final between the Warriors and the Dragons. The Warriors winning that comfortably. I expect that, like you, the Warriors will win this comfortably as well. John, we got a few other quick bits and pieces. I did skip in the Eels news the NRLW / Harvey Norman.
Yeah, the parties. Yeah, I've got them here. So Eels farewelling a number of players, actually. I think it's 10. I'll go from left to top to bottom, left to right on the Instagram post. But we farewell Yasmin Baker, Kiana Takarangi, Chelsea Makira, Jess Kennedy, Maddie Jones, Ruby Jean Canadelis, Mia Middleton, Rashay Farmasui, Tyler Amiatu, and Paige Travis. Couple surprising parties there, mate. Obviously, we got big raps on Tyler, and Rashay had her, ruined by injury, but made her debut for the Eels this year in the NRLW. But yeah, obviously the club have very high opinions on some of the young players that they've debuted this year. And I think that
Tyler Amiatu, John.
Yeah, Tyler Amiatu was a big one there. But I guess that with the emergence of a couple of young players in Riverley, Arlaw, and Tess McWilliams in particular, occupying that middle or lock prop adjacent roles there, that they're going other ways. And Paige Travis, I think she had a club option in the second year of her contract. The club obviously not exercising that with their mix of back rollers that have flourished this year. Obviously, Chloe Jackson again, Boss Kapoor when she was healthy looked sharp. You've got Mahalia Murphy as the experienced back roller there alongside the youngsters like Fontaine Tafua. So, yeah, some interesting departees there from the NRLW. And I guess there is both roster spots and maybe some cap space to make some judicious acquisitions to maybe challenge the likes of the Broncos and the Roosters beyond whatever else can be done to make the game a bit more competitive.
I'm sure we'll hear about one or two of those shortly. But, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by Tyler. But like you said, we have had she had some major injury issues that has meant that she just hasn't got on the field this season. And then, of course, that emergence of some young middles with high work rates. And it may well be that they're after that middle with the high work rate. Tyler was very much an impact middle forward.
Yeah.
Who was just an awkward conveyance to tackle, had an offload in her. But she was still very raw herself. And this would have been an important year for her to consolidate, and it just didn't happen. I'm sure she'll land somewhere, John.
Oh, there's no doubt. I think, Paige came across from England, so maybe there's some homesickness factoring in there too, that maybe the club decided to let her go on the back of that, not sure. But there's a few players that I could see landing in various places,
Ruby Jean.
Ruby Jean will probably
the
get
very first homegrown
Pathways prospect. She'll be rostered somewhere you'd expect. There are some more senior players in
the West Tigers there, John.
Good shout. Takarangi and Jones are on the back nine of their careers, so I wouldn't be surprised if they hung the boots up. But Jess Kennedy, Makira, and Baker could be rostered somewhere too. Be interesting to see what happens. But bearing in mind all these moves being made with the Eels being the premiers in the Lisa Fiola and the Tasha Gao, and we saw those big three come through in Riverley, Tess, and Fontaine. But there are other players too that will be part of the building process for the Parramatta Eels.
Yep. So let's move on to we've got the awards, the
Dally M's quickly.
Dally M tomorrow night.
Yeah.
But we're not going to worry about the different positional awards. Let's just say who we think is going to take the main gong. I don't think there's any Parramatta players in running for any positional
Mitch didn't
awards.
play enough. He would have been in the mix for the overall gong and halfback of the year if he'd been healthy, given what we saw, but did not stay healthy. The only player that would be in the running would be Isaiah Youngie, right, for rookie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's going to be that's a tough field actually between Halasima, Yongi. Who are the other front runners? There was a couple other really good rookies this year too. But overall, look, the narrative is just too strong. And for some reason, it's been perpetuated that the Roosters have no stars, and they were carried to the finals by James Tedesco. I wish we didn't have stars the way the Roosters don't have stars. But James Tedesco, he's had a good year, but he'll probably win the Dally M because Luke Metcalf got injured, and I'm not sure if there's another front runner that was rubbed out by suspensions, but he almost certainly, the way it's been talked about across multiple media circles, he will almost certainly be the Dally M overall player of the year. Neil says that Lomax is in the running for winger. He'll get a nomination, I think, but I can't see him beating out either Xavier Coates or Mark Nwanga-Nitawaze this year, who had very, very good years and have a great story.
Say that name again.
Nwanga-Nitawaze, which I'm not going to be able to say it for 12 more months, mate, before he nicks back off to Union. Coach of the year, Ricky Stewart, you'd say? Like it's a regular season award. Raiders minor premiers. I think that you could make a compelling case for the likes of Wolf up at the Dolphins, obviously Riles here at Parramatta, and there's been a couple other good coaches, but minor premiership for the Raiders, I think, as much as we do like to gripe about Ricky and his history of the club, I think that's a worthy, especially because it's a regular season award and doesn't take into consideration getting bundled out in straight sets. I think that's probably the correct recipient there. Yeah,
look, it probably is. And I heard an interesting argument from James Graham. He said this isn't a coaching award; it's a most improved team award.
That's always the argument when it comes to the gong, is that in the past, great coaches have missed out because it goes to the most improved. Brad Arthur never factored in Coach of the Year because he was Eels at their peak were consistent top four under him, but never the most improved. So it would always be jumped by someone else. Craig Bellamy, Trent Robinson, and obviously now Ivan Cleary haven't got as many gongs as they could have picked up in the past because it tends to be a most improved award. So were the Raiders the most improved team? Probably, yeah.
Yep. And just moving on to some other little bits and pieces. Chevy Stewart in trouble, John?
Yeah. Look, he's a Cronulla prospect from way back. We saw him in the pathways years back. He was at the common, you don't never get in trouble at Northies, right? He was at the famous haunt in Cronulla on the pokies, drunk, poured a beer into a pokies is the alleged charge here. And there's been rumours about the Raiders looking to shop him to the Dragons and a couple other clubs. The article today alleges that he's on over $400,000, which the Raiders get a lot of praise for unearthing Sevilio Tamale and Ethan Strange and taking punts on those under-19s Origin stars. This is the other side of it, isn't it, Craig? Is that you got to pay big money to get those young stars who haven't played NRL and proven themselves. So for every Sevilio Tamale and for every Ethan Strange, there's an Ethan Sanders right now who's buried in depth right now at Canberra. There's a Chevy Stewart. So they've got nearly $1 million tied up between Sanders and Stewart not playing first grade. And to tack on to the Raiders discussion, Craig, there was a rumour today doing the rounds that Daly Cherry Evans is exploring options outside the Roosters because maybe they're going to do a backflip on him. And the two clubs that were linked in this rumour were Cronulla and the Raiders. So if he does end up in Canberra, if that rumour holds true, and I don't know how much credence we should give to it, that would leave Ethan Sanders on the outside looking in.
Well, wasn't there a rumour about Pezzett
potentially going on loan to Canberra, yeah.
Yeah, so again, it's, because it's our understanding that Ethan Sanders was on a very good deal going down to Canberra. I don't have the specifics on it, but, like you said, John, the likes of Ethan and also Chevy Stewart, they didn't come cheap in going to the Raiders.
No, and while it is a exciting and certainly the sort of risky recruitment you have to take when you're in a position of Canberra and you can't lure the premium established stars to your franchise because of the geographics of Canberra and versus the other glamour clubs. I understand taking those risks, but everyone praises them for Tamales and for Strange. This is the flip side. The Chevy Stewarts and potentially poor Ethan Sanders if he doesn't work out for him. You don't get those under-19s Origin stars for pennies or cents on the dollar. You get them for big-time contracts that you're paying for like high-tier proven NRL talent, hoping that they turn into rep stars, which Ethan Strange has, and Sevilla Tamales looks like he will be. But yeah, they've also got these two contracts here. There could be a bit of an anchor on them if they can't. And in their case here of Chevy, that's probably a reasonable cause for tearing up the contract if they wanted to.
Yeah. So it's not going to surprise John?
It would not shock me, no. Or if this fast-tracked the transfer of his contract to another club, with Canberra maybe not paying much in the way of the balance of the transfer.
Would it surprise you if he went back to Cronulla, given that Cronulla,
well, that
they don't have the money?
Yeah, that would be the other part of the rumor is that if that DCE rumor was true, if he went to Cronulla, then how are you fitting that into the spine, right? You'd have to bump one of the playmakers out, and given that Kennedy's off contract, do you put Nico Hines back to fullback and then put DCE back into the halves? Well, he goes into the halves, of course, to partner Trindle. Yeah,
interesting. Or would they take Chevy Stewart back as a fullback with Kennedy off contract? And
it was linked to the Dragons too, so I could see one of those two clubs being a good fit. Like that's close to where he grew up at. So
no one's picked Kennedy up as yet.
No, he's still off contract and had a good game against Melbourne. He had a really nice try assist. That first one he put in for Katoa, where he weaved between defenders and got the pass, was really nice. But he is off contract right now. So does he take a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere at Cronulla or elsewhere? The problem is, if you're a fullback right now, where are you signing? St. George? Like St. George jump out to me as a potential venue if they're going to put Gufferson into a different position. But beyond that, Canberra have Weeks, obviously Pappenhausen, the Bulldogs could be a location. If they sign a cheap, he'd be a good pickup for them, a cheap fullback that actually knows how to play fullback properly, instead of Connor Tracy being the utility man in the one. But then again, they've also got, we're going to talk about it very shortly, they've got problems in the back line fitting people in right now.
And this may all be part of it as we start to get some roster wheeling and dealing.
Yeah.
Just before we get to talking about the Bulldogs, Souths are parted ways with their Pommy half.
Yeah, 6-figure split as well. They've been I don't know where he's going, but there's talk about a 6-figure payout too. One of the most disastrous contracts in NRL history. Lewis Dodd, the unfortunate Val swap there, making him Lewis Dud. One of the big duds, hasn't he? Played 6 games for him. Did he? 6 games? I don't know.
That's, you know what? That's probably 6 games more than I'm aware that he played.
Yeah. Just a disastrous signing. And this all harkens back to one of the popular conversations they've had on the media circles this week about Adam Reynolds and his departure from South Sydney and what a disaster that was for them. What were they thinking, Craig? What was South Sydney thinking? Like, fair enough having concerns about the injuries of Reynolds, and that certainly played. I think that's held true at Brisbane. Like, he has been banged up. But that wasn't the issue. It was the extra year that they weren't willing to compromise on. And their succession plan was Lachlan Ilias. Like, and then now Lewis Dodd. Imagine if we'd let Mitchell Moses walk in his last contract saying, oh, look, he wanted 4 years, 5 years. We only want him for 3. Like, you make the deal. If you've got a top 6 halfback, I think it's probably where you put the cutoff at. Like, you make the deal.
Yeah. And I know that clubs go, well, it's better that a player goes 1 year early rather than 1 year late.
You deal with that down the road.
He's now, Reynolds is now in his 4th year at the Broncos, when Souths were only going to offer 1, and what was he after, like 2 to 3, something like that. So, look,
Jamie's
asking
about the cap specifics. Good question. I'm not sure about how the payout will work. They might be on the hook for some of his cap, on their cap, even though he might be going back to the Super League. I'm not sure how that'll work.
Like you would assume.
Yeah, Lee Mossop's up there, Philip, for sure. That was a big dud for us as well.
We're not trying to be disrespectful to Lewis Dodd in any way, because good luck to him.
Well, he didn't come out like Lee Mossop and say that the Super League is a tougher competition in the NRL. So he's got that going for him, and that's a big check in his corner.
And look, also to be fair, it would seem that Wayne Bennett marked his papers even before he arrived at the club.
Yeah.
So he was in a no-win situation, I think, from the time that Bennett took over as coach. That Bennett didn't rate him, and probably had no intention of using him unless things got to disastrous proportions. And I think if you're a player and you've come from another club, but not just another club, you've come from the other side of the world, you haven't got your support network around you. You're not feeling the love within your club that you've moved to. Like, I think it would be understandable that you're not going to see the best of a particular player. I think probably supporters here, and bear in mind, there's plenty of stories out of England that he wasn't among the top half dozen halfbacks or so, or even worse than that over in England. But I don't think you're going to see the best version of a player like him in Australia under the circumstances that he was thrust into, and especially in a South club that was also decimated by injury. So it was probably the worst case scenario to be in. Finally, John, the Matt Burton rumours won't go away. Phil Gould has come out and said it's ridiculous.
He's never spoken to him.
Which, of course, is the biggest sign that it's something is afoot
that,
for
Phil Gould
to start denying it.
Phil Gould to come out and emphatically deny something means that it's done. That is a pattern of behaviour we're seeing. So yeah, there is definitely something there, or almost certainly something there. Phil Gould has come out and tried to unequivocally, shut it down, because that is what's happened in the past.
Where's he going to land then, John?
I mean, the question is, does he still see himself as a 5'8", or does he want to play? Is he happy to play centre? Because that completely changes his potential markets, doesn't it? And he's provisionally getting bumped out of the dog's spine to facilitate this change. I don't know. Who needs centres, any club could sign a centre, right? Except for a handful of electric backlines. So if you want a big ball running centre, sure. But who needs a half, a 5'8", a limited 5'8", like a 5'8" that needs a strong halfback? The Dolphins?
John, isn't it interesting that the number of players that the Bulldogs have recruited and then shed without
shameless roster churn, yeah. And this is we've spoken about. This is a cautionary tale when you sign the Bulldogs as a player, is that you might be there for a season or two, and they're going to quickly use and lose you. Look at Reid Marnie.
And it makes a mockery of their motto of "bred, not bought."
Yeah.
Because it's the complete opposite.
Jamie's got the Cows as a link. That's a fair shout there. I think that's a pretty reasonable link. I think the Dolphins, if they've got the cap space, makes sense. Isaiah Katoa is a rising, controlling halfback, and I think they're farewelling Nikorima, aren't they? So they would have an opening positionally at least. I don't know about cap space.
Tell you what, they might be a team to be reckoned with, adding to the pace that's
Josh says he'd take him with us while Lorenzo develops. I mean, we do our due diligence. You'd have to think, right, Craig? We've talked about
you would think so, and of course the due diligence involves things like how much it's going to cost, as well as what's the projection of the players within the club,
exactly,
compared to the potential recruit. Do we have better within the club? Is it a no-brainer to bring this player in if the numbers work?
If
the
rumors
player
about
so much better than what we have?
That's all part of the arithmetic there for sure. If the rumors about DCE are true, would the Roosters be in play? Partner up with Sam Walker. I don't like Sam Walker as a primary half. Not to say he's not a talented player, but I still feel that part of his game as a manager is still lacking. Which is why I think there was the attractiveness of bringing DCE in. But if these rumours won't go away that he maybe is getting backflipped on instead of being the backflipper, then they would have an open spot in the halves, although it could just be Savala maybe, but they would also have a spot there, and they've got to replace Marky Mark. There's a star centre there potentially. So I don't know. If these rumours for Burton don't go away, there's quite a few landing spots for him. So very, very interesting. Chat's also bringing up the Super League, Craig. I don't know if you saw the heartbreaker for poor BA.
Oh, yeah. I did want to talk about that because it was diabolical. And BA is still being BA. He doesn't want to blame the officials for anything because the media got onto it, and evidently the rugby leagues had to admit that big mistakes were made. There was a try that was awarded against Leeds where the on-field referee called it no try, sent it up to the video, and despite what looked like compelling evidence that the player did not ground the ball properly, that it was overturned and given as a try, and they've said no, it should not have been overturned. And then even in that last try, there was a diabolical forward pass that was thrown in that wild sequence of passing. Look, it probably should have been shut down, and it was a remarkable try. But, yeah, it was like a flick pass. Was it Saylor that threw it?
I think it was Saylor, yeah.
But it was like a flick pass to a player who was clearly in front of him, not just a little bit, but clearly in front of him. And there were a few other decisions through the game that were just really, really rough. I think there was even an issue around the clock as well, and time off, and when there should have been time off or not time off. And it was not one of the finer moments of the English Rugby League over there. And unfortunately, Brad's been the one that's had to cop the fallout as the coach of Leeds.
When he finally snaps, it is going to be biblical when it comes
yeah.
Well, the straw that breaks the camel's back is going to be legendary when it comes to ball right off the officiating. It's
Is it going to be like me, myself, and Irene, with Jim Carey when he finally snaps?
A different personality emerges.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
Mitchie.
Okay, well, that just about brings us to the end of this podcast.
Just to clarify for Mitchie, who's come in the chat, who's here before, I know, but he's dropping on the Lomax use. We know Mitchie. We talked about it earlier in the show if you want to use the rewind function on YouTube. But Cliff Notes, it's a rumor, completely just a rumor at this stage. Brafen Astor dropped it on NRL 360 that he'd heard there were rumors that Lomax might have played his last game with the Eels going to rugby union. I will note that I dropped an article in the chat earlier this thing. Is it so the link? Can we show us? No, that is a Reddit meme. The Rugby 360 as an entity still do not have any paperwork done to come into competition next year. So this is on the back burner as far as we're concerned. Maybe there's something to it, maybe there isn't, but don't lose sleep over it. The Eels and Lomax has still got 3 years to run on his contract, and that's all we know right now.
Yeah. So, and again, we come back to what was said that Rugby 360 said that they weren't interested in getting players to break contracts. So, not to say that players under contract wouldn't necessarily leave if they went and asked for a release. That's probably a different matter. And if we're Lomax to do that, whether the Eels would just go, oh look, we don't want to stop you. We're not going to get into a fight about that. That sort of scenario, I don't know. I couldn't answer that. But
yes, Chris.
Yeah. So anyway, again, thank you, John, for another live podcast. Stick with us because we don't shut off when the season's over. We will keep the content coming your way. Now, not sure about our live podcast, John, whether we might go to the delayed recordings. We'll see how we go with that. We'll keep people updated.
If there's ever any big news, we'll get we'll set. If big news breaks, then set your clocks for an instant reaction podcast that night. Yeah. We'll do a live podcast if the Eels make a big signing or something happens with Lomax or in general with the NRL where it's something that alters the landscape. We'll go live that night. But otherwise, we might switch to the pre-recorded format just so I don't think there's enough football to talk about, at least not until the international season gets underway proper.
Yeah, and look, the pre-season it's really only like barely over a month away, so we will have plenty to talk about again within a month. But we will keep the content coming your way. Our good mate Chris Ricketts has got some ideas he wants to throw out there for us to cover in podcasts during the off season and pre-season. As we said, we're 52 weeks a year, every year with Eels content. So thank you to everyone who's tuned into this, no matter what platform you're on. If you can give it a like and subscribe, that would be much appreciated. We know that we've got less than 700 subscribers, and we do, especially on our live podcasts, go well past the 1,000 or 1,500 mark from time to time. So how about everyone that's having a listen, you give us a subscribe? That would be brilliant. Thank you, of course, to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, NRL and Parramatta, and, of course, the home of the Eels Paraleagues. Again, that little shout-out to Noah and Ella. Keep working hard in the holidays. Noah, we're going to back you to come back fit and strong and ready to go with your footy. And, again, thank you to everyone that's been here in chat. As we always say, go you mighty Eels.